Welcome to Seneschal, and today we have a battle report to go over for a Test 2K list I put together. I was lucky enough to get a game in on Thursday afternoon with a really fun local player. He brought his chaos to combat my, quote, Imperial Lickspittle, unquote, Adepta Sororitas. So the ires of the Orders Militant was raised and retribution had to be exacted. We played the first Eternal War mission from Chapter Approved 2018, Vital Intelligence. Dawn of War deployment, and I was able to have first turn. So let's go over the list real quick. I ran Ebon Chalice Brigade Detachment, Celestine and double Canoness, one Canoness being the Warlord with the Brazier to give the Bubble of Improved Shield of Faith and deny the Witch, and a second Canoness with the Blade of Admonition to stay back and protect the back line with some good melee punching power. Then 6 Battle Sister squads, all with 3 Stormbolters per unit, of which 2 of the squads were loaded into a repressor to be able to move around safely while still being able to shoot out the 6 Stormbolters between the 2 squads through the fire ports. Been considering trying to push a couple of Dominion squads into a single repressor, but not sold on wanting to either disembark one or missing out on those extra melter shots. So we'll see if I try that out. Then I have the Preacher, Mistress, and 8 Repentia. Have them tucked into a Rhino to get up the table and then fall out and hopefully delete a unit. 3 Dominion squads, 2 of them with 4 Meltas, and the last one with 4 Meltas, a Combi Flavor, an extra body, and a Sacred Banner of the Orders Militant this time. Each of them in a repressor, pretty standard there. Then 3 Exorcists for the longer range fire support. His Chaos Forces were a battalion of Typhus and a Demon Prince with 2 up armor and the 4 up Feel No Pain. Then a blob of Poxwalkers and 2 Plague Marine squads. Plague Surgeon for support, Terminators for deep strike threat, and a Hellbrute. 2 Bloat Drones to harass, Mortarion, and then a Thousand Suns patrol for some more psychic potency and bodies to hold objectives. Now I was able to get the first turn, so moved the Dominions up, 2 towards the middle, 1 off to the left to contest the left objective on his side of the board. He failed to seize, popped the cover stratagem, and then my first movement phase began with giving the Warlord Canoness the extra movement act of faith, just to make sure that she was able to stay supporting both the repressors and then the models following up behind. The repressors moved up, 2 in the middle to threaten Morty, and then 1 on the left to take that objective and put damage on the Chaos Rhino holding the Plague Marines. Celestine, the Rhino, and 1 of the Battle Sister squads also moved up the middle to try and maximize the auras, and then the other Canoness stayed back with the Exorcist to provide rerolls of 1 to them. The 2 Dominions and Exorcists unloaded everything into Morty, pushing him down to 9 wounds. The other Dominion squad pushed a few wounds on the Rhino but failed to kill it, and the Flamers and Stormbolters only managed to kill 1 or 2 of the Plague Marines that were out in the open. So good damage on Morty, but unable to really blunt the damage output of most of his army. I was also unable to claim First Strike. The Exorcists actually impressed. I think the D6 damage upgrade is really good quality of life change for them that does allow them to spike damage that actually just can't be ignored, so it gives them a better place on the table for sure. Bottom of 1, he moved everything forward, prepping to damage and charge my castle in the middle. He also pushed the Poxwalkers and Typhus towards my right flank that was holding an objective with 2 of the Battle Sister squads. His Psychic Face caused me to really be impressed by the Brazier. I knew it would be good, but having that many denies can be really incredibly strong. I ended up denying 3 abilities with Shield of Faith and then another with the Stratagem. That kept Morty in play, stopped him from buffing Morty, and kept the Poxwalkers at T4. Prescience and Smite still went off, but blunting a phase that dramatically made that relic feel more impactful than I even expected. Granted, that is going to change based on dice from game to game, but absolutely the standout relic. He then went into shooting phase and was able to push wounds on all of the repressors, taking the middle one down to 5 wounds. The vulnerable save on the middle models lived up to expectations there and highly mitigated the incoming damage. He ended up charging in with the Plague Marines, both on the far objective and the middle, as well as Morty on the most wounded repressor in the middle. The invulnerable save also came through big, and I was able to deny First Strike by keeping the repressor in the middle at 2 wounds from Morty's attacks. End of the turn rolled around with a 4-2 scenario advantage for the Sisters. No First Strike or Slay the Warlord for either of us, with me controlling 3 objectives, including the active one. Turn 2 started with the repressors falling out of combat, Repentia, Mistress, and Priest unloading and getting into position to charge, Celestine the Canonist repositioning for the invulnerable bubble and shuffling Stormbolters into position to fire on Poxwalkers. Shooting phase began, popped the +1 to hit on the Canonist and used Vessel for the Exorcist support. However, his saves started to show back up, and it took all the Meltas and all but one of the Exorcists to finish off Mortarion. His death exploded into mortal wounds that killed some of the Repentia, killed the wounded Repressor, and put damage on some other models. The final Exorcist put wounds on the Bloat Drone, and a few Plague Marines and Poxwalkers fell to the remaining fire on the table. The Repentia charged the Plague Marines in the middle, failed to fight twice, even with a reroll, and due to unlucky rolls on his part, they were just barely able to kill all the Plague Marines on the nose with no wounds to spare. Bottom of 2, he moved Typhus and the Poxwalker Bomb forward. The Demon Prince moved forward to threaten my Battle Sisters and the Exorcists. The Bloat Drones moved to threaten the Dominions who fell out of the Repressor that was destroyed, and then the other Battle Sisters that had moved forward to support the middle. The left side Plague Marines and Rhino moved to surround and destroy the flanking Dominions, and the Hellbrute moved up to support the middle and eliminate the Repentia. Lastly, his Terminators showed up to tie up the Exorcists and silence those guns. His Psychic phase worked far better than the first turn. I was able to deny a couple of powers, but he's able to smite away the Battle Sisters on the right flank and put some wounds on the tanks. He was also able to clear out all the Dominions with the Bloat Drones in the shooting phase. He put more damage on the remaining Repressors. He charged the Repressor on the flank with the Rhino Marines, and the middle Repressor with the one Bloat Drone, the Priest and Mistress with the other Bloat Drone, and the Repentia with the Hellbrute. The front Exorcist with the Demon Prince, and the back Exorcist with the Terminators. His charge rolls were on point for all of those, so he managed to pull the majority of my army into combat by not failing a single charge. So kudos to him on that one. He killed the Repressor on the flank, pushed both the Mistress and the Priest to 1 wound, killed a couple of Repentia while the Hellbrute suffered a couple of wounds. The Demon Prince and Terminators also pushed wounds on the Exorcists, with no real damage coming back their way. Top of 3, our Repressors move out of combat. The Exorcists engaged by the Demon Prince fell back as well. Celestine and the Canonist both moved to attack the Bloat Drone, while the Priest and Mistress retreated from the drone that had engaged them. The Canonist with the Blade of Admonition moved in position to charge the Terminators to try and clear up the Exorcists. The Dominions, still in a Repressor, unloaded into the Demon Prince and were able to wound him some, but not enough to even come close to killing him. The Rhino and the Battle Sisters were able to kill the very wounded Bloat Drone. The left flank Battle Sisters were able to kill a couple of Plague Marines to try and support the retreating Dominions. The right flank Battle Sisters were able to use their Stormbolters to clear all but a small handful of Poxwalkers. Celestine and the Canonist with the Eviscerator charged the Bloat Drone, with Celestine taking a couple of wounds in Overwatch. The Canonist charged the Terminators, but failed to fight twice with a passion, even with the reroll again. Good saves on his part led to the Bloat Drone surviving Celestine and the Canonist, and he only lost 2 Terminators. The Hellbrute was dragged down by the Repentia. Bottom of 3, he moved the Poxwalkers and Typhus into the middle, along with the Demon Prince moving to threaten the Canonist and Celestine. The Chaos Rhino moved back solidly on the point, and the Plague Marines moved to charge the Dominions. He had much more luck in the Psychic phase this turn, which, with me failing to really deny anything but a smite roll of an 11 with the stratagem, as it would have likely killed Celestine. His shooting was short and sweet. The Priest died. I lost a Dominion on the left flank. He charged with the Walkers, Typhus, and the Prince. Typhus and the Walkers killed all but one of the Repentia and the Mistress. Prince killed Celestine, but due to some really bad save and feel no pain rules on his part, the Eviscerator Canonist cut him down in prejudice in return. The Dominions lost another model in melee. The Canonists and Terminators flailed wildly at each other without really accomplishing much, as both sides of that melee decided to roll like champions. So that brings us to top of 4. The Dominions on the flank fell out of combat again, running away from those Plague Marines forever. The remaining Repentia also fell out of combat, leaving the Walkers and Typhus out in the open. The Stormbolters were able to cut down the last of the Walkers, while the Melta Guns were able to kill Typhus, with an Exorcist that was not in combat being able to send rockets downrange to finish off all but, I think, one of the Plague Marines on the left flank. With that, he conceded, since he only had some Cultists, a Rhino, and a support character 2 left on the table. Though given all of that, the score was quite close. Due to the active scenario objectives, he was able to keep the game close, coming to a 15-12, all things tallied. A solid victory to the Adepta Sororitas, and some good learning lessons found from the game. The new Sisters of Battle Cloud of 4-up Invulnerable is very strong against low volume, high AP shooting, and the extras feel way better than I expected them to. That bump from D3 to D6 damage was really nice. Now, I'm not sure that they still don't need another slight tweak, like shoot twice if they don't move, or move half speed, or a free reroll to their number of shots, or maybe just give them back indirect fire rules that they had a long time ago, would really bring them in line with other factions as far as damage output for the points for your, heavy support long-range tank. And now I stand by my original statement that Repentia outside of Bloody Rose just feel wildly underwhelming for their points. They just lack the punch I feel like they should have, barely killing a wounded squad of Plague Marines and then taking 2 turns to kill a Hellbrute just doesn't feel like it matches where they should be. And they would never have had the chance to do that if he had brought out the Siege Cultists to just autogun them down. Their quick demise to Poxwalkers is what should be expected from them rather than their living 2 turns outside of their transport. Celestine feels okay, but is now more of a 160-point counterpuncher who needs to stay within your army's bubble to maximize the synergy and survivability. Battle Sisters with Stormbolters felt like champions. They were impactful on the table, worth their points, even if they didn't necessarily earn all their points back for every single squad. They certainly weren't a waste. The Acts of Faith are okay, but having a game where even taking the order to increase my odds and still failing over 50% of the Acts of Faith I attempted, now granted most of those failures were the Passion, but even re-rolling the Passion 3 times, I failed every single time. Now that was under average rolling on my part, but the point remains is that they both got weaker and got more random, which just doesn't feel great. The 5-up Invulnerable Warlord trait is by far the best. I don't think there's any argument in my mind as far as that goes. That is the only Warlord trait worth taking if you are playing a real army. Now I say that in the I'm running some Bloody Rose Canonesses with a different Warlord trait for this 500 point list I'm going to talk about at the end of the video, but that's not the same thing at all. The Brazier Relic is worth taking in every single list in my opinion, especially on a Canoness that you have the Invulnerable trait on. Having my Repressors and Rhinos denying psychic powers while not backbreaking by itself is something that will absolutely hamper many Psyker-heavy armies, and those are the same Repressors and Rhinos that have a 4-up Invuln at the same time. So hard to remove, get to fake being Psychers, fantastic. That's probably the feel-good moment of playing Sisters currently. Having the Blade of Admonition on my other Canoness I think is really solid. I think it's worth the 1 CP still. So you have the Canoness with the Eviscerator and the other one with the Blade of Admonition, so that all of our HQs are legitimate threats in melee. Not just to foot sloggers who are, T3, but to really any model on the table in front of them. The Battle Sister squads of Stormbolters piled into Repressor together really worked out nicely. I like that mobile platform with Strength 4 shooting that can take or deny objectives while still safely dishing out a solid number of shots. All in all, I'm still unsure about the new Sisters options, but I think that we may not be as wildly aggressive as before with our damage, but the amount of punishment that we can absorb has certainly changed, given that 4-up Invulnerable. And that hopefully balances out a lot of the other changes. We got incredibly more potent in Psychic Defense, which is great, though having to rely on taking a specific relic to have that portion of the Shield of Faith rule matter is still a feel-bad moment for me. That being said, it means that that's gonna be the relic I take every game for sure. I have an event coming up at the end of this month at a local shop that is 500 points, patrol detachment only, rule of 1, with the exception of transports and troops, just like the rule 3. No named characters. I am looking at taking a Bloody Rose patrol detachment with a Canoness with the Blade of Admonition, Stormbolter, and Righteous Rage Warlord trait. 2 Battle Sister squads with 3 Stormbolters and a Chainsword each, piled into a Repressor with a double Stormbolter, and a Dominion squad with a Combi Flamer, Power Axe, 4 Meltas, and an extra body in a Repressor with double Stormbolters. Hoping that 3 drops could allow me to get the +1 to go first, be able to move the Repressor up with Vanguard, and still leave it in a position for the Canoness to be able to advance, load into it, have the 2 tanks slide up the table, hopefully put out a good chunk of damage, and then weather what comes, and then be able to counterpunch with the Canoness popping out and hopefully killing anything that was going to try and threaten him melee, while letting the melta-guns and the stormbolters thin out everything else. I hope everyone is enjoying the games that they are playing and defending Vigilus and the Imperium from the heretic, xenos, and mutant. Have fun wargaming. Ave Imperator.